Welcome into the Inside Carolina Postgame Podcast. I'm your host, John Seiglie, joined by Sherrell McMillan. We are sponsored, as always, by Giant T-Shirt and GiantT-Shirt.com. Sherrell, unfortunately for this one, man, not a happy night for Tar Heel fans. Unlike the last postgame podcast that we did, Carolina falls just short to Kansas, 72-69 in the national championship game. But I think it's been pretty telling overall from what I've seen. You just don't see like this on social media, for example. There's been very few Tar Heel fans that are just sitting here lamenting. And I think that's where I wanted to start the podcast. Obviously, everyone's sad that Carolina lost a title game. But, I mean, looking at the season as a whole, Sherrell, is there really a sense of sadness that you have at this point, man?
Well, I think I understand the sense of sadness because opportunities to win national championships don't come often. And so when you have one, you hope that you can take advantage of it. But I think in part, the reason there is not the level of angst that there maybe was in the past is because this wasn't a powerhouse Carolina team for the majority of the season. This wasn't a team that had the expectations of a 2008 or a 2009 or a 2016 or 17 or even 18, coming into the season. It was kind of a new coach, a new system, some new players. How will they mesh? There's some talent, but how will it all come together? So I think those were question marks. So there was never the pressure of they have to win a national championship. And then they got so low at one point. It's hard to tell what the lowest moment was, but there were a few that I think it removed all expectations. I sat here on a podcast about a month and a half ago and said, UNC, it doesn't matter if they win the next game, they won't do anything of consequence in March. I said that on the podcast. And I think, the growth that they've shown is why a lot of fans are kind of like, yeah, this is awful. You never want to lose national championships. But at the same time, you can be extremely proud of the way they played. You can be extremely proud of the way they fought back over and over and over in all these games, the way they took punches. And so I think that's why you kind of have a disappointed but proud fan base, if I'm judging correctly on what people are saying and kind of the sentiment I see on the message boards and talking to people.
Yeah, I think disappointed but proud is a really good way to sum it up. And I think if Carolina hadn't been up by 16 at one point, probably doesn't sting quite as bad. But I mean, credit to Kansas. It was not the best played college basketball game I think I've ever seen. That's pretty fair to say. But in the second half, I mean, Kansas made enough shots and, the Tar Heels just couldn't. It was a situation where Caleb Love has been the hero really in the big moments. And unfortunately tonight, just for whatever reason, ankle injury, running out of gas, he couldn't do it. And, RJ Davis really stepped up as best he could. But I think overall, Sherrell, this was just a Carolina team that this was the one night for this entire NCAA tournament run that when in crunch time, the shots just didn't fall. And I think that's really about it.
Yeah, they ran out of gas. I think that Kansas is a tough opponent. And I think defensively is where it really showed up. I mean, even in the first half during that run, everything was really, really hard for UNC. And then in the second half, it's like they dialed up the pressure even more. It really contained Caleb Love. I mean, Abaji's a great defender. I think a lot of people fall in love with his threes, but he's an excellent defender, and he was on Caleb for most of the night. And, Caleb had one of his poorest shooting performances. I think he was 5 of 24 from the field. So that's part of it. When you limit Caleb, it hurts North Carolina. And then RJ Davis, obviously, same thing. Harris is a long defender, much taller than RJ Davis, and his sole job is to play defense. He's really not an offensive player whatsoever. I don't even know if he scored tonight. So there's that. And then obviously Armando Bacot wasn't 100%. I mean, it was clear. The kid is, I shouldn't call him a kid. The man is out there battling as hard as he can. But you could tell he just wasn't right. So between those three things and the pressure that Kansas puts on you when you miss a shot, it all flows together. So you get forced into a tough shot, which they're a decent rebounding team. And when they got the rebound, then they're flying up the court as fast as possible. And, that stretch where Carolina gave up the lead in the first 5 or 6 minutes of the second half, that's what it was. It was just that their pressure was so good that it fueled their offense. And that's why they were a number one seed. That's why they're national champions. They have good players, and they made an epic run in the second half to come back and win the game. I think for UNC fans, again, you can kind of hurt in the moment because again, it's the opportunity to win a national championship. But just think about those last 5 minutes of last 5 or 6 minutes of that game. So UNC takes the biggest of punches that Kansas can throw and is down 6, and finds a way to crawl back into the game.
Back.
Caleb Love has a sprained ankle. Leaky Black is on the bench with 4 fouls. Puff Johnson is, vomiting or something on the court. Not sure exactly what was going on with him.
Yeah.
Brady Manick possibly has a head injury after being knocked around a couple of times. And Armando Bacot is gimpy because he's playing on an severely injured ankle. So you got all that. So really your only starter who was at 100% in the game for most of the game was RJ Davis, and he hit the ground hard a couple of times.
And played how many minutes this tournament? I mean,
I mean, an absurd amount. And this was their first loss on one day's rest. So I say all that to say, I know there are some portions of the fan base are not going to like what I'm about to say, but it's hard to be too upset. It's hard to be because the issue with this team earlier in the season was energy, effort, and toughness. And now at the end of the season, they are defined by energy, effort, and toughness. I mean, they literally were dragging themselves to the finish line, trying to find a way. And, amazingly, they had a shot to tie it, at the end of the game in the last second. So, a lot of credit to Hubert Davis, a lot of credit to his staff, but a lot of credit to Kansas too, because they took North Carolina out of what it wanted to do for the majority of the game, especially offensively. I mean, the numbers, that's one of the poor shooting performances UNC's had this entire season. I'm sure stats will come out, maybe even longer. It was a Virginia type shooting performance for UNC. So I'm just kind of going, but that's kind of where I'm at, is that it was just they didn't quite hit enough shots. This UNC team can't shoot 5 for 23 and have Bacot limited and win a game, and that's what happened.
Well, honestly, if you consider those, you would almost think that Carolina got blown out, and instead it was a 3-point game.
Yeah,
I mean that's still remarkable.
Right. If you just go through the numbers, Caleb Love 5 of 24, RJ Davis 5 of 17, Armando Bacot 3 of 13, and then you have Manick and Johnson at 4 of 8 and 5 of 9. So anytime you have, let's do some quick math. You have Love, Davis, and Bacot going 13 of 54 from the field. You would assume Carolina lost by 20, 25, maybe even 30. So the fact that they played some good defense as well, and then just completely dominated the boards. Part of that was that they missed a lot of shots, but they had 55 rebounds as a team. So that really kept them in it. But Kansas just a couple of plays here or there. Remy Martin hits a couple of those corner threes. Those were huge.
And that's it. Yeah.
And, UNC up 69-68. I think that's when Bacot had went out with another sprained ankle, and UNC has a lead. McCormick misses a hook shot, and they're just not able to box out. You have to think if Armando Bacot is there, they probably grab that rebound, but McCormick puts it back in, scores, puts Kansas up 1, gets it on the next possession, does the same thing, puts Kansas up 3, and that's the margin.
I think Bacot was in for that one, but it was kind of because he rebounded over Manick. Maybe I know that the play that you're talking about, and that's slim margins really.
Yeah, and then slim margins too on the other side where Harris steps out of bounds and they have a chance to to make a play to send it to overtime. And I mean, they've made plays over and over and over again this season. It just came up a couple short.
Yeah. Let me ask you about that run in the second half that Kansas made, because we discussed this a little bit before the pod started. Do you think that Hubert Davis could have maybe called a timeout during that run? Because I was of the opinion, he could have, but honestly, the way Carolina was shooting tonight, it's kind of one of those things where maybe you plug the hole in the wall for an extra couple of seconds, but was there anything that you thought maybe Coach Davis could have done differently to start off that second half that may have stemmed that tide a little bit? That I feel like most people knew it was coming at some point.
Yeah, I mean they actually did a good job. It was 40-25, and then I think Kansas had cut it to maybe 10, then Carolina hit a 3, got it back up to 12. So they had kind of worked through it. And then it was just the turnovers. They just had some uncharacteristic turnovers, some stuff that kind of crept in from maybe earlier in the season in their freshman year from the guards that happens when you're playing against really good defenders. So I mean, maybe it could have helped him. He called one, I'm pretty sure. Calling another one, I don't know, because then you start losing the ones towards the end of the game to set things up. So, I mean, it kind of had to play its course. You would have liked to have seen a little more composure there and getting the ball to Baycott and getting the ball to Manick. I mean, Manick only had 8 shots. So you would have liked to seen a little bit more composure there. But in the end, I mean, I think you have to give more credit to Kansas than blame to UNC in this particular case, because, Carolina's thing is, looking for a fight, start the fight, finish the fight. And they looked for it. They started it. They almost had it finished. And then Kansas, came in and started fighting too. And when you play the style that Kansas does, that's kind of, they can make furious comebacks. Furious comebacks is what they've done this entire tournament. So I put some blame on UNC because it seemed to lose their composure some, but at the same time, you have to, credit Kansas.
Yeah. And I mean, the officials were letting him play. I mean, I thought that there were a lot of calls tonight on both ends that the officials could have called fouls on. They swallowed their whistles. And I mean, they let the players really go at it. The blocking call against Manick, I think, was big when Kansas during that run was a 3-point play. Because at first I thought Brady had set his feet, and then on the replay, his foot was on the line. I mean, again, something like that. If he's 6 inches ahead of the charge circle, that's a turnover rather than a 3-point play for Kansas. And Kansas played Manick really well. I mean, they really did a good job, I think, of running him off the spots that he wanted to shoot from. And that just took out a very key element of UNC's offense that they've relied on during this run. And I think in the second half, basically the whole offense was Baycott coming to set a screen for RJ Davis, and RJ would try to make something off of that ball screen. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And then during those few minutes when Caleb Love just could barely run, it was that I think that's where it was lost, is it was just too much of RJ Davis trying to shoulder the entire offensive load. And I mean, that you're not going to win hardly any basketball games if that is what you're relying on in crunch time in a national championship game.
Yeah. And again, I think part of that is Kansas's defense. When, Harris is on Love, he's a much longer, taller, when he's on RJ Davis, he's a taller, longer defender. And Abaji kind of made it really difficult for Caleb Love. And so then you're left with RJ Davis is really the only one who can create for himself. And it was just a struggle to shoot for UNC. I mean, that honestly is that simple. I mean, they are a team that has to make a good amount of threes to win a game. And they were a -3 from 3 to a team who doesn't make a ton of threes, regularly. 32% from the field, 22% from 3. It's just hard. And the other thing was Kansas is excellent at playing passing lanes. And one of the ratios or numbers that we always looked at was assists to made field goals. And North Carolina had 23 made field goals in the game. They only had 9 assists.
Yeah.
So that shows you that the ball wasn't moving. And I think a part of that was that Kansas wasn't going to let the ball move, but so much because of how much pressure they put on the guards. So it was tough. But again, they had the ball down 3 with a chance to tie the game. You can't. If you would ask at the beginning of the season, would you take North Carolina being down 3 with 4 seconds left in the national championship game with the ball with a chance to tie it? You'd say, yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
To your point, I think the 15-point lead, maybe if it was 8, I'm not going to say I don't want to say the players got complacent because that's not really what it was. I think you just have to give credit to Kansas. They just came in and they kind of took it from them there in the second half. Well, but then you have to give equal credit to UNC because they never went away. It felt like they were going to get knocked out over and over again. It would get to 4, then would get to 6, and then back to 3, and then to 4, and they always hung around. And they were up 1 with 1:41 left.
Yeah. Well, and in the first half, I mean, you couldn't have played much worse than Kansas did in that final 10 minutes or 10 and a half minutes. And Carolina capitalized, to their credit, but it was a poor shooting night. And in the second half, Kansas finally made enough shots. And basically that was it. But Carolina never quit because, I mean, honestly, when Kansas went up by 6, the way that the Heels were shooting at that point,
Yeah.
I was worried that Carolina might end up losing by 12.
Yeah, it felt like that Kansas was going to go on another run and put it up, 66 to 52 or something like that.
Yeah.
But, and a lot of that, we haven't talked about them, but a lot of that credit for keeping Carolina in there is Puff Johnson.
Puff Johnson. Yep.
We've talked about how Dontrez Styles had his moment in the Baylor game, hitting at 3 and overtime and just, playing career high in minutes and just really doing some good things. But this is for Puff Johnson. I know people don't want to start talking about next year moving forward, but a tremendous confidence builder for him to play at the highest possible, the biggest possible stage in college basketball against one of the 2 or 3 best teams in college basketball and have maybe his best game of the season all around. That's got to be a positive for him moving forward and something he can build on, in the offseason moving towards next year. He was tremendous. He kept Carolina in there because I don't remember the last time Carolina had somebody from the bench score double figures. It's been some time. And because of the way everyone else is shooting, they really needed that to stay in the game, and he provided it.
He did. And again, we're not going to get into the next season talk. We're not going to get into the way too early top 25, but I think RJ Davis and Puff Johnson, they showed a lot, and it'll be really interesting to see how Coach Davis utilizes those 2 guys as the cornerstones next year. And we do this podcast before we can actually hear the talk from the coaches and the players with the post game stuff. I really want to hear what Coach Davis does have to say. But at this point, Sherrell, we've probably wrapped this one up, I think, as about as well as we can, man. Final thoughts for you tonight, just summarizing this game and the season as a whole, my friend.
Yeah, this game was one where I think 2 talented teams, fought each other hard. But Kansas just kind of took it. And, North Carolina, like I said, their motto is kind of looking for a fight. And Kansas, kind of ended the fight there with that run and then with the 2 plays from McCormick at the end. But, for the people who don't like moral victories, I understand 100%. And I'm not trying to claim that this was a moral victory, but I don't know how anyone could watch that game and not admire the way that the North Carolina players fought through everything they fought through, whether it was foul trouble or missing shots or sprained ankles or, sickness, whatever it was, they fought through it and almost found a way to kind of win a national championship. They were that close. So my advice to the fan base would be, let this hurt. It hurts because as we said before, you don't get many opportunities to win a national championship, but at the same time, don't let the loss overshadow what's happened over the last month and a half, and don't let the loss, kind of sour your perspective on this particular team because they've done some tremendous things here this season that weren't expected, and this could be in the future kind of the catapult to taking North Carolina back to where it kind of always has been and should be, which is, one of the premier programs in college basketball.
Well said. All right, Sherrell, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. For everyone here at Inside Carolina, we want to thank everyone for listening. And again, we are sponsored by John T-Shirt and JohnT-Shirt.com, your place to go for Tar Heel gear. Signing off, we'll talk with everyone again soon.